Thank you. That was wonderful. Take over, but before I comment, and then I have an important question to ask Bunny, I'd like us to hear from Adaku from the National Women's Law Center, because she has to leave because she's preparing for a webcast. And even though her offices are right in this building, we need to give her some time. So what we want to do with most of the rest of the program is to focus specifically on Title IX coordinators and how we're going to start off the first panel. But before I talk, Adaku's going to give her introduction to the first panel. That's how members of the National Coalition for Women and Girls in Education, as some of our leading equity advocacy organizations, have been paying attention to and supporting Title IX coordinators. And we just want about 3 minutes. I know that the Law Center is doing lots, but just give us a little background on that and get into more detail.
Sure. Thank you, Sue, and thank you.
And do you want to come up over here so that we get you on the tape better?
Can I use the microphone, or no, just project?
You just project, because it might interfere with the tapings.
Great. So as Sue mentioned, I work at the National Women's Law Center, and the work that we do to help Title IX coordinators, a lot of it is individual calls. We get a lot of client intake asking about particular issues that Title IX coordinators are seeing in their schools. But we also do annual trainings in the state, and Connecticut in particular has a really involved Title IX coordinator at the state level, and they arranged for us to do a 2-day, 6 hours each day annual training for Title IX coordinators in K through 12 schools. And they get credit for the training, and so we kind of walk them through all the things that Title IX covers and requires, and things that they should be looking out for in their daily lives, as well as just like a legal overview of the framework of Title IX. And we also sometimes get calls from different districts or schools that have resolution agreements with the Department of Education. So if you're found in to not be compliant with Title IX, usually the department will put together a resolution agreement, and part of the resolution agreement, the first thing is always like training, so that school officials and Title IX coordinators and people within the schools know what Title IX covers. And so a lot of times we get contacted because of resolution agreements, and we pull together a training and train coordinators on that as well. And another really big thing that we do is just talking with the Department of Education to kind of let them know what Title IX coordinators need, and making sure that they have the resources and technical assistance so that they can enact policies in their schools and also be on the lookout for certain things. So we asked Ed to put out guidance, to colleagues letters. I know that Sue has been instrumental in getting issued the Title IX coordinator guidance that was released last year about all the things that Title IX coordinators should do. And so we do a lot of administrative advocacy on that as well. And we have all our resources up on our website if you want to learn a little bit more about ways that Title IX should be enacted and enforced in your schools. And that's kind of just like a very general overview of what the National Women's Law Center does.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank
It's a big involvement.
Now we're going to
Are we back to this gentleman?
Okay. Dylan, we really appreciate your coming in. Dylan has one of the most organized early advocacy programs for Title IX coordinators from our AAUW members. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, I mentioned before, my name is Dylan Kama. I'm part of the public policy staff at the American Association of University Women, AAUW, and I oversee our project to deliver the Title IX resource guide to Title IX coordinators around the country. It's because AAUW is a national membership organization. We have kind of a unique capability to have our hands in all of the different states and many of the different school districts to deliver the Department of Education's Title IX resource guide. So we kicked off our delivery project last year at our national convention, and we kind of made a call to action to all of our members and all of our branches to take this on as a branch activity where they can get together, find their local Title IX coordinators, and deliver the resource guides to them. So I'll pass around what we call a program in a box that gives a step-by-step guide to all of our members to make it as easy as possible to deliver the resource guides. So the resource that I'm passing around is AAUW's program in a box. It gives a few different steps for our members from the very beginning to print out the resource guide, to find their local Title IX coordinators, to schedule a meeting with that coordinator, and we give them kind of a couple of talking points that they can use to explain to their coordinators why this resource guide is so important. And one of the things that we found during this project is that oftentimes the coordinator is the athletic director, or it is just kind of a just a random employee who is assigned to handle Title IX.
It's most often the athletic director, unfortunately.
Right, right. And so what we want to make clear in delivering the guide is that Title IX extends far beyond just athletics. It deals with sexual harassment, pregnant and parenting students. And so we found a lot of success in making it clear to Title IX coordinators that their job is much more than just athletics. So something else I want to highlight about our project is some of the metrics that we have. We have, as of today, we have deliveries in over 27 or 28 different states across the country. And that accounts for, I think we've delivered to more than 650 different schools or school district offices. So 650 school employees have gotten this resource guide from our AAUW members. And a couple of exceptional states that I want to highlight are Oregon and North Dakota. Oregon has delivered, I think, to 98% of the schools or school district offices in the state. And so they've done a really exceptional job. And also, like I mentioned, North Dakota, I think there are 440 offices that they located, and they can find information for over 350 of them, which they've delivered to. So our state and local branches have really, I think, done a great job so far in delivering the resources. And we're using those two states kind of as models for other states that we haven't had deliveries in to take on the project. So our next steps right now are targeting the remaining 22 or 23 states to kind of target them and make sure that we can deliver this resource guide to at least all coordinators in all 50 states. Finally, the last thing that I want to mention is that our project is definitely more than just about delivering the resource guide and then just leaving it from there. We encourage our members to invite them to join AAUW to learn more about Title IX, or we invite them to follow up with the coordinators to host panels, and we've actually seen that happen in a few states. In Idaho, for example, our member delivered the resource guide to a Title IX coordinator, and following that, she put together a panel of local Title IX coordinators in the Boise area. So high school coordinators, district office coordinators, they all came together for a panel after in Idaho.
One of the good examples of horizontal networking.
Right. So they have these panels with Title IX coordinators meeting each other, talking about what they have done successfully and what they can do more successfully. So I think the Resource Guide Delivery Project is kind of a good catalyst to have Title IX coordinators talk about their best practices and try to improve Title IX in their districts.
Do you by any chance coordinate with the Council of Chief State School Officers, the American Association of School Administrators, in your delivery system?
Not that I know of.
That might be a good idea for you to
Yeah.
reach out, because with electronics, you're not paying for postage to deliver these things. There's no excuse whatsoever that we shouldn't have this document, as good as it is, distributed to all school districts in all states in a forthright manner.
Right.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I agree.
I'd be happy to, your staff knows that too, the women who do government outreach are fabulous. But you might just take that and throw it back on the table.
Sure, definitely.
Great, thanks very much, Connie.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Connie's from the American Federation of Teachers.
That's right. And Sue and I actually did a session, I think at our last convention, where we had a session of people come and talk about Title IX, what they knew about Title IX, which wasn't much, and were they able to identify their Title IX coordinators, which wasn't very often, but they knew that there was a law there. So Sue asked me to kind of think about what is it that a teachers union can do to help. Okay, so first and foremost, I think one of the things we have to do is educate all our members. Just what is Title IX and what does it mean to a classroom teacher or paraprofessional? You got to remember that all grade levels and all jobs in the school need to be taught about this, because people witness things in the school office. Paraprofessionals, bus drivers, cleaning people, kitchen help will see sexual harassment happening, etc. And so everybody needs to understand what Title IX is. They need to identify for their school district and hopefully for their school building, if it goes down that far, who their person is. And then they should also know who the state person is, because if they're not going to get relief at their school or in their school district, then they need to know that they can call out a state coordinator at the state education agency to pull them in. They need to raise issues both with the union and the school system when they see what they think are infractions against Title IX. And this is adding another layer to everything else we have to do every day in the classroom setting. So it's not going to be an easy sell, I can tell. They need to look at their workplace for compliance, what's actually being implemented in the name of Title IX within their building, and please, let us dissociate once and for all Title IX from merely being athletics to being all educational programs. That is one of the hardest lessons to get across to school administrators, etc. It doesn't really have everything to do with sports. It has to do with all educational programs. They need to keep current on the changes in guidance. How are they going to do that unless they're in one of those vertical structures that you were talking about, Sue? Because they have to be able to talk to one another and talk with their current Title IX coordinators to know what's happening. And most importantly, they have to be independent and not afraid of retaliation. And I personally have seen retaliation against people here in the district who are fighting things out of compliance. So I am thinking that we are living in a less than perfect world, so somehow we have to be able to assure them of that.
And the teachers' unions play an important role in helping protect people from
Sure we do.
retaliation.
Pamela will tell you that too. You have to propose your school system-wide compliance reviews, because maybe it's all right in your building, but it might not be in another building or in another program. You have to develop a tool that can be used at the school site by staff, making sure that it's up to date with all of the different guidances that's been released, so you have to keep on that. You pay particular attention to instances of bullying, sexual harassment, and sexual assault, because people have to realize Title IX covers that area. And while it's been swept under the rug for many, many years, we need to bring it out in the open and eradicate it. So, let's see. You have to be sure that you have a clear grievance or complaint procedure that's consistently followed in every case. So do they even know that they have a complaint procedure and how it works? Is the question that I start with. And then, if they don't, we need to build one. In the same way that you have to develop effective remedies for infractions, and share that with the network of all the Title IX coordinators so that they know what the penalty is for when people do things. You've got to offer training on the resource guide, Dylan's guide, and you have to do that in conjunction with other partners like AAUW. So my guilty secret is I promised Dylan in January that I would get with him and we would start trying to distribute it through our locals in AFT, and here it is, May, and we haven't done it yet.
You're busy.
So no, I have Catholic guilt, I just carry it.
Is that a Jewish thing?
Yeah, it's either that. You have to press to keep the state and district website current with the Title IX coordinator information and trainings, because I truly believe not only these trainings need to come from the local school district, but they have to be in sync with your state education agency. There should be one seamless effort to produce these things. And frankly, we're not seeing it, whether it's shortage of funds, shortage of personnel, their own perhaps lack of knowledge of the statute itself, whatever it is. And the real arm is the OCR coming down on it, because I think you guys, those guys have the most powerful say anywhere. And finally, you have to establish those peer networks we were talking about. They need to know each other from school to school, and if the unions can help to spread that information, then we'll do it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we'd like to hear from Pamela. Pamela Rios-Mokley from the National Education Association. Thank you, Connie.
Good afternoon. So not to take up too much more time or to repeat what Connie just shared, we're also at the National Education Association in the bind of how we get this information out, and not just get it out, but how to get buy-in and get people to actually act on it. So as Connie said, the first barrier is informing people what Title IX is. They think it's just connected to athletics. They think it's just connected to the coaches in the building. They don't draw the larger conclusions. And so as I was listening to Connie's remarks, I started thinking about all of the efforts we're doing around school discipline and school push-out. And as we're looking at those regs and trying to get rid of zero tolerance, that's another way that we as a unions can kind of build that connection, build that correlation between what's going on, especially now with the highlights from the National Women's Law Center and AAUW on the whole issue of girl push-out. So how are girls being now victimized, and a lot of those young ladies that are experiencing discipline issues are also the individuals that are experiencing sexual harassment in schools. So how can we draw that conclusion and bring Title IX into that to raise the Title IX coordinator issue and to raise the level a little higher than it is currently? Also, to Connie's point, that there needs to be training. So as listening to other people in the room of how can we bring this training to our conferences, to our different trainings. Sue has been kind enough to address our Women's Issues Committee, which is our big body who pushes those issues out to the president of the NEA and to the leadership and governance to make sure that this issue is highlighted, and they've done it constantly by putting in recommendations. Unfortunately, we're a little slow to act. You know, we're a big elephant walking a little slow. But being able to draw those conclusions and connect it across various issues will be helpful, not just to us pushing it out, but also to our members, so that they can see this as not just a passing issue for just women and girls, but an issue of concern for everyone, including our LGBTQ community. And so, again, in alignment with Connie's remarks, it's about the commitment from the unions to ensure that these resources are provided and that the members not only understand how Title IX helps them in what they do every day, but that those individuals who are probably identified as Title IX coordinators are probably also union members, and how to support them in the roles that they do and the jobs that they do in schools and school districts. And that's it.
It's good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jan Erickson from National Organization for Women.
Thank you, Sue. You're always getting me into trouble.
No.
Actually, that's not true. Sue is a wonderful source of information and encouragement from our sister organization, Feminist Majority Foundation, and really helps me in my job, because now has 6 core issues, that only one of which is educational equity. So we really have to be on our toes to try to keep up with what's happening in the world of equal access to education. I recently found out a small fact about now history in Title IX, and that is that when the department or when the federal government was sort of dragging its feet on developing the regulations to implement Title IX, now together with AAU and a few others, those were back in the days when there weren't nearly as many organizations that women have put together to try to advocate for themselves. Started really hollering and pressing the federal government and members of Congress to get those regulations done. Of course, it only took 5 years. But anyway, that's what happened, and ever since we've been very active in the coalition that was created out of that experience, the National Coalition of Women and Girls in Education, which I think has done a fabulous job in sort of encouraging and sometimes prodding the Department of Education and other government officials to do the right thing when it comes to equal access to education. We have had many concerns over the years in the NCWGE, and one of them is the growth of single-sex schools, and this of course has been a special emphasis of Sue Klein, who is one of our experts on what's going on, and we've really fought this trend because we have always felt, and there was a certain amount of evidence, that when it comes to single-sex education, girls and young women get the short end of the stick. And we now know from the many studies that have been done and the meta-analysis of those studies that single-sex schools really don't provide better educational outcomes than do co-educational schools. So that fight still goes on. Certainly here in the District of Columbia, where there's been a big push to provide special educational programs for boys of color. And we have been very concerned about that, because when you look at the statistics of girls and young women in the District of Columbia, they really aren't that much difference when it comes to educational outcomes and some of the challenges that they face. They're not that much different from what boys and young men of color experience. So we're still continuing to work on that. It was shocking to me in the experience with single-sex schools to find out how many education officials and teachers really were not even aware of what Title IX meant for their schools and their jobs. I mean, it was just really an eye-opener, but I should have really known, because way back in the early 80s, when I was living and working in Juneau, Alaska, my son-in-law, who had just gotten his master's and was a young teacher, and came to me and said, "Can you tell me about Title IX?" And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because they want me to be the Title IX coordinator." Oh. And I thought, oh my gosh.
Well, at least they told him.
Yeah, they told him, right. So anyway,
no
you're
different
supposed
than
to
the
do
young
that
man.
half-time. I think he did, and I have to ask him, I think he did refuse to take that on because I think he felt it was really just too much for him to do as a starting out teacher. So anyway, I should have known about that. Now really is focused more so on its grassroots activists, and we are entrusting of them to do the activism that's needed at the local and state levels to pressure officials and others, the press included, about educational equity issues. We try to provide the information they need to respond to their requests. Most of the requests we get are about athletics and their daughters being denied equal time on the playing field, and all kinds of other deficiencies when it comes to equal opportunity in athletics. So that again is another battle. A number of years ago, when George W. Bush came to office, there was an effort to try to undermine equal access to athletic programs, and we worked in coalition with many wonderful people, including several Olympians, and we managed to fight back some of their worst ideas. We know that the Title IX Coordinators Network really needs help. It is a network with lots of big holes in it. And therefore, we are ready to try to do what we can to encourage filling in those holes and getting people properly trained. It is absolutely essential. And we will be providing information to our grassroots activists on what they can do at the local level. One of the best opportunities we have is through our email lists. We have a leadership list we communicate with very often. My boss, Bonnie Gravenhofer, and I write that list, that email newsletter for our leadership, and we can use that to alert them as what's coming up and what is going on in this area. We also use our annual and regional conferences to provide more detailed information, and we have one coming up, as I mentioned, in June, and we're going to have a great workshop on Title IX at that time. So I think that's probably enough. I should also mention that sexual harassment and sexual assault, of course, are the hot topics, and our people are very, very fired up over that. And we have worked on those issues, alerting people as to legislation that was coming up. Of course, we've worked a lot on Violence Against Women Act, which has provisions in it about sexual assault, and that is another area that dovetails with our work here on Title IX. So there are many ways that Title IX can be pushed forward, and we want to continue to do this with our grassroots, and I wish everybody luck here in continuing to make Title IX a very successful program.
If any of you are going to have a conference or a meeting, if you let CWI know, we will put it in our next newsletter as an upcoming event. And the only way we will get to know that is when you share it with us, because we do like putting out the events that people can choose to do. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Can I say something?
Sure.
I'm sometimes known as the godmother of Title IX because I was the first person who was able to do something about it. And so I am sitting here just, there's a Yiddish word called kvelling, where you just take enormous pride and enormous pleasure in something, and I just...
And well deserved.
Yeah, and if anyone had told me I would still be here thanking people for their work on it, I think I would have wept, but I'm not weeping. Because I see it's a much longer struggle than I initially thought. I thought we passed Title IX 1 year, the whole thing would be
Yeah, it's done.
And there are so many good people and so many good things that I've heard today that I am just absolutely pleased.
It is a remarkable experience, and my
I'm
kudos to
very
all of
happy.
you.
Pamela. Sorry.
While Pamela's coming up, can I also ask those of you who have given these nice little presentations, if you have your notes typed up, we would love to have them because we're going to be making a nice long summary for our next newsletter. And it would be helpful to have your notes handy.
It's so timely to be able to come up right at this point in our meeting, because what I was really having so many epiphanies about are the intersections of priority. around equity as they apply to gender and many of the other equity issues that we've been touching on today. And as the Mid-Atlantic Equity Consortium, as we shared, we do work with issues of gender, national origin, and race as they apply to public education. And our strategic partnership is probably the strongest representation of how we seek to do the work. The reason I'm highlighting the strategic partnership is because I was noticing and thinking about how we can re-articulate and reframe the way that we bring forth technical assistance to bring clarity in naming every aspect of educational equity, just like we've been saying about Title IX today, but also showing how they intersect with our educational equity issues across the board. So the stronger our articulation becomes, and I was also struck by Connie and Pam in the fact that we can say that we have inter-organizational strength in being able to share our articulation, educational equity in each of these areas of concentration. Is that making sense to us? I mean, this is even different from what I thought I would be sharing with you today. But the notion of strategic partnership is Mid-Atlantic Equity Consortium, technical assistance, Mid-Atlantic Equity Consortium, and strategically looking at multi-tiered approaches to positive supports for educational equity issues. And the more that we're able to articulate the specific concentrations in a way that our public educators understand how that impacts the way that they are making a difference for children that are not being well represented, the stronger that we're doing the very thing that we're doing today. And I'm able to articulate what it is that Connie does, what it is that Pamela is doing, what it is that Dylan is doing, and weave that into what they already are familiar with. That is what is going to help us continue to build that critical mass of follow-up, of implementation, of program intervention, of making them do something different about it. And so, even though I had some other prepared notes, I'm hoping that that
You mentioned that you were a Title IX coordinator.
Well, I did mention that, and part of why I'm also able to do the presentation this way instead of the way that I planned it is because I was thinking about when I was a Title IX coordinator in Prince George's County. There was a time when we had a resolution that came forth to Prince George's County. That at that role, I happened to be a multicultural professional development specialist, and at the time there was not a dedicated Title IX coordinator, which was something that I had been kind of questioning for quite some time. But because we had this resolution to contend with, if you will, it was determined that it was now a priority. The way that I want to share this will show the relevance of how we are interacting with one another today. We use it as an opportunity to proactively empower ourselves to say, yes, we're faced with this resolution, but this is an opportunity for us to empower ourselves to figure out what kind of institutional supports do we need so that we can become more self-responsible in addressing the issue that has come forth to us. So that was the approach, can I say, that I kind of representatively spearheaded. So we reached out to National Women's Law Center. I wanted to be able to speak with her a little bit more today. And we said, yes, we have this responsibility. Yes, it's a compliance issue. But along with our general counsel and our deputy counsels, we want to be able to set ourselves as an example of how we responded to the call. So while it started out as a compliance issue, it became a program improvement agenda. And that was able to happen because of the strategic partnership that National Women's Law Center and our school district was willing to kind of go along with the thought of, let's not just say react and make them go away. Instead, let it be, empower ourselves in the midst of this issue so that we can set the example for what we want to do programmatically anyway. And so, even though I was working in public education at the time, that mentality has carried itself into the way that I'm working with Mid-Atlantic now. That whole notion of how is it that we can embrace the challenge, the deficit that we may be faced with, and then shift our mindsets into an asset building. How is it that each person, each institution that we become familiar with can contribute to what it is that we know we need to bridge in our own gaps of program development, and then use that as our approach to intervention for bringing equity. So I hope that that is a way that's relevant to the context of the way that we're communicating with one another today. And it also gives you a little bit of a feel of how Mid-Atlantic Equity Consortium works.
Jules?
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Everybody has so much wonderful information to share with. Move on.
Moving right along. Now, I have a handout, and I think, Sue, you printed out something for me?
Yes.
Would it be in here? So this is what we were passed around is, how can we build a supportive communities educated in Title IX? There are about 4 case studies that the nonprofit that I'm board chair of, Stop Sexual Assault in Schools, has worked with in this very past year. So if you want to just take one and pass it along, and I will not move from beyond.
No, go back up a little bit. You were perfect where you were.
I was perfect where I was. All right, I'll bring that to
your
the
3 Title IX godmothers are right there with you.
Title IX godmothers right there. All right, well, I come to you today as a trainer, as a legal expert with Title IX, having gone to law school, as a former teacher, as a sexual assault survivor from high school, and as the board chair of Stop Sexual Assault in Schools. Esther and Joel have rounded me up and put me as their speaker, so I wanted to come and discuss what we can do as a nonprofit that has just begun and work with Title IX coordinators, a group that I have worked with for a while as in my own practice as a consultant and a legal expert and advocate, but in a different role that's a different role than one that I have as board chair for Stop Sexual Assault in Schools. In the handout that you have, the first case, and I know we're short on time,
Yeah.
so
Why don't we just let people read them?
I'm going to let people read them, but I do want to let you know the very first case is the case of Esther and Joel's daughter, and Esther and Joel are the founders of Stop Sexual Assault in School. And what I did was basically go through facts, whether there was a criminal investigation, and as we know, a Title IX investigation is different than a criminal investigation. And then whether OCR was involved at this point that we know of, or whether they had been involved, and what was the main Title IX issue at stake, along with, for future students, what was our main concern as an organization. And I did that for each case. And then I went through and took key takeaways. And the key takeaways, I think, are what I want everyone from the equity groups and other Title IX coordinators to take into mind, more than just the atrocities that happened in these cases. The key takeaways are the issues that we've dealt with in terms of dealing with FAPE, of trying to make sure that every single child has a free education, and not just one that is behind a computer screen because she got sexually assaulted at school. And that it was written into the honor code that you couldn't have sex at all at school, and since she was sexually assaulted, that was included in the honor code, so she was expelled. Due process for all, that includes both the accused and the survivor, and I use the survivor term. Intimidation concerns and retaliation concerns and re-victimization concerns and unjust reporting, and trying to have a process and working with teachers groups and other and equity groups to try and figure out how we can be supportive of the victim or survivor. Understanding what reporting should look like, and trying to learn from past mistakes about reporting, maybe even the mistakes that we've learned from the college systems and how we can bring that into the K-12 system. Understanding that Title IX rights that are really separate from the criminal process. We've had a lot of meshing lately in the calls that we've gotten to our schools. We like to really support advocating for MOUs, memorandums of understandings, and making separate systems. Update all policies. In the report that Sue and others have worked so hard on in the key takeaways that she went through earlier today, One of the things she always kept saying was missing was we couldn't find the Title IX coordinators. A lot of time in my searches and investigations, I can't even find policies too. I can't find sexual harassment policies. So when we go back and look at this, well, we need a Title IX coordinator, but we also need a sexual harassment policy that's been updated. We need to have honor codes that have been be updated, behavior codes that are updated. And we need to work together to make this so. Cover up and collusions with different departments, and we need to work together to make sure that does not happen. I was speaking of MOUs regarding that. Strong support systems within the communities, and I think all these equity partnerships can make this work. I know in my community in Richmond, Virginia, I work strongly with domestic violence shelters and therapists who work with students who have eating disorders because they're trained highly in trauma, and we have found that a lot of students who have been sexually harassed or violated or even raped, they do have some sort of body dysmorphic disorder of some sort, and we work with them and to help with traumatic healing and even gain a sense of how do we help the survivors of sexual assault in K-12 schools. So just building those alliances, and with we have in Virginia Commonwealth attorneys, but everyone else has district attorneys, national and local attorneys, advocates, crisis centers, just any type of working and making sure that things can go smoother, understanding trauma, how the brain with trauma works, and understanding those issues better. Establishing a relationship with police officers. Because police officers are showing up more and more in our schools as school resource officers, and they are sometimes the first on the scene with the Title IX, if there is a Title IX coordinator, and writing the report. And they need to be trained in Title IX. They have no clue at sometimes, first of all, how to handle a sexual assault, second of all, what Title IX is. And that is, if we're lucky, we have a Title IX coordinator that might be able to fill them in. We have been working myself with Henrico County Schools and Richmond City Schools and Chesterfield County Schools.
I'm sorry, we're running out of time.
I will zip through, and thank you, Sue, for letting me know. And I just go on through, and I'm about done, but a lot of this information is on Stop Sexual Assault website, and you can always contact me for it. But there are so many people like yourself and also in the area that just don't know that these resources are out there, or that people like us want to help. So please use us, and I think conversations can be built to make it stronger and help the Title IX coordinators out as well. Thank you.
Oh,
Probably came from the furthest from Richmond, so thank you. We'll learn more. Now for Kelly from the Feminist Majority Foundation.
Hi, so as Sue has said, my name is Kelly Music. I am here representing the Feminist Majority Foundation. I'm the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast campus organizer with our Choices Campus campaign, where we help to support and grow campus feminist groups across the United States. I wanted to speak a little bit more broadly about some of my own personal experiences with Title IX, because I know we are running out of time. FMF has a wonderful Title IX Coordinators on Campus campaign that includes a lot of the suggestions that have been brought up by other wonderful speakers today. However, I wanted to speak as a recent college student who closely worked with Title IX. I graduated last spring from the University of Mary Washington in Fredericksburg, Virginia. Last spring, I also filed a Title IX complaint on behalf of my feminist club. I can say firsthand that Title IX is not being enforced. The OCR is currently investigating hundreds of complaints from across the country about sex-based discrimination and harassment. We need structural federal change to address this. Students who are facing harassment, assault, and discrimination cannot lead that fight. We cannot be experiencing these things and simultaneously holding our administrators, our legal officials, and our police officers accountable for the law. Title IX coordinators cannot serve the students' best interest when their jobs are to serve the best interest of the presidents of their universities. That is simply a disconnect. My Title IX coordinator was a supremely well-qualified woman with a PhD. She looked great on paper. That did not manifest to her actions. She could not support us while serving at the direct discretion of our sexist, apathetic president. You know, we need federal legislation separating Title IX coordinators from the administrations that they are supposed to be holding accountable. Until that happens, women will never have an equal educational experience. Thank you.
Thank you.
Marcia Gilmore. I'm the Deputy Title IX Coordinator at George Mason University. All right, I've been working in the capacity as the Deputy Title IX Coordinator since February of 2013 in the interim for 14 months up through April 1st when Mason has been fortunate to hire a new Title IX Coordinator, and we're working collaboratively to empower those that from the spectrum. I think what has already been discussed, some of the things that the new Title IX Coordinator and I discussed today before I arrived was that if we had a wish list, one aspect we would love to see this kind of cadre of resources to provide us with is access to when there are, for example, pending litigation, where there's some input that needs to be provided from the grassroots level. We can provide that input, that voice, that perspective that's unique from doing this work time in and time out. Another aspect of course, is just the resources of networking together and connecting a name with a face and an experience, because it is a unique role that we're playing at this juncture. And it does have with its pros and cons. Making sure from a personal perspective that there's a high level of well-being for these individuals that are doing this hard work day in and day out. Because there is a perspective where you are meeting, in some cases, those that have been traumatized, having to give in or give out, and then making sure that there's an ample balance for the needs of that particular Title IX coordinator. This is not heavy lifting work. If you're also looking at the policies, procedures, and practices, you're also holding your senior administrators accountable. And then you're also, on a day in and day out, having people walk in the office, tell their story, and walk out, hopefully triggering possibly a process or resources, external or internal, and the need to go home and make sure you are healthy to do it the next day. So those are some of the aspects that the new Title IX Coordinator and I talked about around a wish list that maybe this group could help us with, besides the connectedness, policies and procedures, of course, input with pending legislations or changes to legislation. Also making sure that there are opportunities for the coordinators to engage in well-being as a practice so that we can sustain ourselves to do this really, what I would call very heavy lifting work. So that's some of what we talked about.
Wow.
Jocelyn, do you want to just introduce yourself? Here, come on up.
Yeah, we're waiting for the other lady anyway.
We appreciate your coming.
Hi, my name is Jocelyn Sanders, and I'm the new Title IX Coordinator at UDC, which is why I didn't want to say anything, because I don't have...
Because you're new.
Because I'm new. But I do appreciate Sue, you inviting me here, because it has been very helpful. And I already made a note that I'm going to reach out to you to seeing how you're already training one person, just to get some insight on, how another university...
Did you pass out the Title IX list?
Yeah. I'm handling it. So, yes, I appreciate all the wealth of knowledge that I'm gaining here, and hearing how it all began. That was awesome as well.
Thank you.
So Marie's not back yet. We're making it just by about 2 o'clock.
Let me just say.
Jeanette wants to say something first.
I've been just thinking about
come up
here. Yes.
Hi, I'm Jeanette Lim, a Title IX advocate. I was thinking about everything we've learned, and this whole, my grandson is applying for colleges, and he's trying to decide where to go. I think it would be a useful tool to have if somehow we could rate the colleges and universities in terms of Title IX and equity for women, safety. We have Clery Act data. We can come up with some kind of index. Does the university have a full-time Title IX coordinator, not somebody who has 10 other assignments? What is their history? Do they have a code of conduct? I'm sure with this group we could come together with some kind of index where we could publish a list of what are the top schools where your daughter's going to be safe, where you're going to be safe. And even try to get, this I think would address that issue of the conflict between trying to protect the reputation of the university or the school district and do the right thing about reporting criminal activities and sexual harassment. So, just a thought.
I'm thrilled that you say that, because years ago I remember, can't remember.
We tried to do that.
We did do something like that.
Yeah.
We did go around and ask colleges and universities what they were doing about their women's policies.
Was this before Clery Act?
Oh, way before.
Yeah.
I'm talking
Yeah.
like 1970 something. Way before.
Right.
And also,
Good time to read
Ms.
it.
Magazine,
Let's revisit it.
maybe about 5 or 8 or so years ago, did a nice issue. It's not exactly on that, but on women's studies program in colleges.
That would be part of the grid.
Yeah.
Can you major in learning about your own history?
Thank you. Or another idea that's even simpler is maybe there's some way we could get them to present some analytic data on this on the university's own web pages.
Yeah, big data analytics, that's where it lives.
Panel, Title IX coordinators. Marie, you want to start off?
Here is a handout.
Rosemary, Chelsea, if you want to help hand out things.
So the handout is information on our organization as well as the recently signed Title IX legislation in DC for K-12. So my organization, the DC State Athletic Association, was created in 2012, and it was created to create a level playing field among the DC public, charter, and private schools in athletics. My position is a relatively new position. I came on board, I believe, in about 2013, very late 2013. And one of the first things that we did was to create a Title IX working group. And with that working group, we were able to inform and contribute to the actual legislation, which is, again, the handout that you see being passed around. Excuse me, it's amazing that we've been able to accomplish this in the District of Columbia. We're now one of, I think, 5 states that have this level of data collection that's now required by law. And that is Pennsylvania, Kentucky, Georgia, California, and New Mexico. So the data collection will begin next school year. So the first report, I believe, is due in June of 2017. So the approach that we've taken at our organization is really one of support, education, and training. We've held a few trainings. In fact, Sue attended one of them recently. Really just helping those people at the school level understand what their responsibilities are and how they need to approach their work. So we've done a lot of good work. We have a lot of good work left to do, but this legislation is a huge step in the right direction.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone wants to say some closing remarks?
If anyone had told me back in the 1970s and we would still be talking about women's issues in education, I think I would have wept. But I am not weeping because I didn't know how big the issue was. I thought one year we would solve everything if we got Title IX. And so I just want to thank everyone here and all the people who are not here who are doing what you're doing to make this world a much better place.
I now know where the cockles of my heart is. And I thank you because they're feeling very good. So, who came the furthest, farthest? How many miles did you come?
She came from Richmond.
All right, and if anyone would like the book, it's on Amazon. They don't have printings out, they make them as you need them. And I do think the unions really need to provide them to their schools. I've got a Anyway, this is, please, we have to leave this room because there's another.
Okay, I have a takeaway question because
Yes.
it's not going to end on a happy note. I'm not going to let you do it because this question has been burning and reiterated. But why, in God's name, would anyone be a Title IX coordinator? I don't know.
You're just your amazing.
Okay, okay, well, that's the only reason.
Well, it's a great position to change the world. This is terrific.
I love your outfit. Would you bring
Anybody haven't signed the list, please see me.
Please make sure.